Assalamu alaikum. In today's lecture, we will study the line codes as far as digital communications are concerned. In today's lecture, we're gonna only have an overview about the line codes, and whenever we're gonna use these line codes, then we will gonna have a complete analysis regarding these line codes here. So in this lecture, we're gonna only study the overview, or you can say the short description about these line codes. What are the line codes in digital communications, what are its type, what are its properties, and the things like that. So as far as line codes in digital communication is concerned, a line code is the code used for data transmission of a digital signal over a transmission line. The process of just wait hold a second. The process of coding is chosen as to avoid overlap and distortion of a signal, such as intersymbol interference. Now, in coming lecture, we're going to discuss about this intersymbol interference as well. But till now, you have to remember that it is only a type of interference that we're going to face in digital communication. It is just like an interference that we have that we're going to face in digital communication. uh, okay, the properties of line coding is concerned. Following are the properties of line coding. As the coding is done to make more bits transmit on a single line, the bandwidth used is much reduced here. That is the basic property of a line coding. For a given bandwidth, the power is efficiently used. The probability of error is much reduced when we're going to use line codes. Error detection is done, and the bipolar 2 has a correction capability. Power density is much favorable. The timing content is adequate. Long strings of ones and zeros, that's the bits that we're going to use, or the message sequence that we're going to go use, is avoided to maintain transparency. Now, what are the types of the line codes that we're going to use in digital communication? There are three types of line coding. First one is called unipolar, polar, and bipolar. As far as unipolar signaling is concerned, unipolar signaling is also called on-off keying or simple OOK. Okay, so this is for on-off keying here. Okay, so you can call this one as an abbreviated name as well. The presence of pulse represent a 1 and the absence of pulse represent a 0. There are two variation in unipolar signaling, and non-return to 0, and this is called NRZ. Sorry, it's written twice here. Non-return to 0 is called NRZ, and return to 0 is called RZ here. Now, what is a unipolar non-return to 0? In this type of unipolar signaling, a high in data is represented by a positive pulse called as mark, which has a duration t naught equal to the symbol bit duration. A low in data input has no pulse. The following figures clearly depict this unipolar non-return to 0 scheme. And here you see this is a clock signal. Remember, this one is we are using this for synchronizing of the data here for the incoming data here. And here are the data bits here. Now, according to this unipolar non-return 0 technique, we'll get 1 for 1 here, and we will not get a pulse here. Here you see we are not getting a pulse here for 0, and for 1 we are getting a positive pulse here. Okay, so that is about the unipolar non-return 0. Now, as far as the advantage of a unipolar non-return 0 signaling is concerned, it is simple. Lesser bandwidth is required. Now, the disadvantage of the unipolar non-return 0 are no error correction can be done here in unipolar non-return 0 scheme. Presence of a low frequency components may cause the signal drop. No clock is present here. Actually, this clock is only for we are only using for the you can say the synchronization of the data here. Okay, loss of synchronization is likely to occur for long strings of ones and twos, because here you see and the clock will gonna this clock signal will not gonna synchronize if we have a longer version of the you can say the bits here, bit duration here. uh, so uh, then we're gonna move on to another one. First we are studying unipolar return 0. Now we're going to move on to unipolar return to 0 signaling. In this type of unipolar signaling, a high in data through represented by a mark pulse. Its duration t naught is less than the symbol bit duration. Half of the bit duration remains high, but it immediately returns to 0 and shows the absence of a pulse during the remaining half of the bit duration. It is clearly understood with the help of the following figure here. You see this is a clock signal again. We are taking the same clock signal. Now we are taking the same bit data here, but here you see we're gonna represent according to this unipolar return 0. We're gonna represent it half this one, half of the bit duration for positive pulse, and for other one, for if we are having a 0 here, we don't have a pulse here. Okay, so that's how we're going to represent unipolar return 0 signaling. Now as far as advantages are concerned, it is very simple, and the spectral line represent at the symbol rate can be used as a clock here. Disadvantages of the unipolar return 0 are that there will be no error correction again here. It occupies twice the bandwidth as unipolar non-return 0 signaling is concerned, and the signal drop is caused at the places where signal is non-return at 0 Hz. Okay. Now we're going to move on to another type that is called polar signaling. There are two methods of polar signaling. They are called polar non-return 0 and polar return 0. As far as polar non-return 0 is concerned, in this type of polar signaling, a high in data is represented by a positive pulse, while a low in data is represented by a negative pulse. The following figure depicts this as well. This is a clock signal here. This one is a data stream here, and according to polar non-return 0 scheme, we're going to represent our signal like this. Please see, in this type of high in data is represented by a positive pulse, while low in data is represented by a negative pulse. Now you see here, this is a low data and this is a high data. Now see here, this is represented with a high pulse here, and this is represented with a low pulse here, and we have to define the level as well, because we are defining data in terms of a higher pulse, positive pulse, and a negative pulse here. So if we have a this 0 low data, then we're gonna have a negative pulse. If we have a 1 here, then we have a positive pulse here. So and this data, then this scheme goes on. This is about polar non-return 0 signaling. Now as far as advantages are concerned, the advantage of polar non-return 0 are, it is simple, it is no low frequency components are present here. As far as its disadvantage is concerned, as far as disadvantages are concerned, the disadvantages of polar non-return 0 are there is no error correction again here. There is no clock is present here. The signal drop is caused at the places where the signal is non-zero at 0 Hz. Okay, so now we're going to move on to another signaling type that is called polar return 0. In this type of a polar signaling, a high in data through represented by a mark pulse. Its duration T0 is less than the symbol bit duration. Half of the bit duration remains high, but it immediately returns to 0 and show the absence of the pulse during the remaining half of the bit duration. However, for a low input, a negative pulse represents the data and the 0 level remains same for the other half of the bit duration. The following figure depicts this clearly. And that the thing that is written here, you can see clearly now this thing in the given figure here. Here you see, for half of the pulse, we're going to represent, if we have a high data here, we're going to represent it with half of the pulse of the bit duration with the positive pulse here. Then we're going to represent it with no pulse here, or we're going to return to 0 here. Then we're going to represent this 0 with the negative pulse, and for other half of this bit duration, it will gonna be 0 here. So that's how whole data will be, you can say, be represented using polar return 0 scheme here. The advantages of polar return 0 are, it is very simple. It has no low frequency components are present here as far as advantages are concerned, and as far as its disadvantages are concerned of the polar return 0, there is no error correction again, no clock is present. It occupies twice the bandwidth of the polar non-return 0 scheme here, because we are representing pulses in two ways now for one pulse here. The signal drop is caused as places where the signal is non-zero at 0 Hz. Now we're going to move on to another type of signaling that is called bipolar signaling here. This is an encoding technique which has three voltage levels, namely plus, minus, and 0. Such a signal is called dual binary signal as well. An example of this is called alternate mark inversion, and this is called AMI. Sorry, I have written AMI again here. For a 1, the voltage level gets a transition from plus to minus, and from negative to positive, having alternate ones to be of equal of polarity. A 0 will have a 0 voltage here. Even in this pattern, we have two types. First one is called bipolar non-return 0, and second one is called bipolar return 0. So from the model so far discussed, we have learned the differences between the non-return 0 and return 0 schemes. It just goes in the same way here too. The following figure clearly depicts the things here. Now you know about the non-return zero and return zero concept here. So we're going to use the bipolar non-return zero, and so we're going to classify the bipolar non-return zero scheme here, and bipolar return zero signaling here. This is the data stream here, and consider that we are uh, representing this with a positive pulse here. Then for low data we don't gonna represent here. Then for the alternate high data, alternate means after you have an high data, then after alternate data you have to represent is a negative pulse. Now for as far as low data is concerned, it will gonna be represented with no pulse here. Now see here, if we have one again for high, then we're going to represent it with pulse here, but for now for again one, we have to represent it with a negative pulse here. So whenever there is a high data here, and you can say you're gonna and consistently, for example, we have a high data here, then we're gonna represent it with the alternate marks here. And as far as low data is concerned, we don't gonna represent it with any pulse here. Okay. Now as far as bipolar return zero signaling is concerned, when we have a high data here, uh, remember in this scheme we're gonna use half bit duration, so that's why half of the positive pulse is there. Then we don't have a data here. For zero we don't have a data here. As far as then again high data, we have a half of the negative pulse here. Here the only difference between these two is that in bipolar return zero we are using half of the pulse duration here. So this is about the bipolar non-return zero and bipolar return zero signaling. Now the pulse duration and the symbol bit duration are equal in non-return zero type, as far as bipolar non-return zero and bipolar return zero schemes are concerned, while the pulse duration is half of the bit duration in return zero type. Now what are the advantages as far as the bipolar return zero or non-return zero signaling is concerned? These are the following advantages we have if you're going to use it in digital communication. It is very simple. No low frequency components are present here. It occupies low bandwidth than unipolar and polar non-return zero schemes. The technique is suitable for transmission over AC coupled lines, as signal dropping doesn't occur here. A signal error detecting capability is present in this, and the disadvantages of this signaling is concerned. Following are the disadvantages. So we don't have an clock is present here. Long strings of data causes loss of synchronization in this type of signaling here. Then we're going to move on to our last, you can say, a definition as far as digital communication is concerned, and that is called power spectral density. Now see, the function which describe how the power of a signal got disturbed at various frequency, distributed at various frequency in the frequency domain, that is called power spectral density. Remember, we have already studied power spectral density in our previous lecture when we have studied the random processes in communication systems or in digital communications. PSD is the Fourier transform of an autocorrelation function, and you know it from your previous lecture. So the similarity between observations, this is the similarity this is the similarity between both of them. If one is represented in the for example, we are representing autocorrelation in the time domain, then its frequency domain representation with the power spectral density of the signal. For example, this is the time domain representation of an S of t signal, and this is a rect here starting from minus t by 2 to t by 2. Then in frequency domain, its power spectral density, or for example in frequency domain, you know from your previous knowledge that this rect will gonna be represented with the sinc function as far as its frequency domain is concerned. So for example, this S of t signal mathematically going to be represented with is equal to a. For example, we have an amplitude a for mod of t less than t by 2 and 0 for t greater than t by 2. We don't have a, you can see we don't have find any signal when the signal is going from other values from t by 2 here. So that's the mathematical representation of this rect. Now as far as this sinc is concerned, we have described many times in our signal and system course and in communication system course regarding this sinc functions. That AT will be the amplitude, okay, and this sinc function pi tf and pi will be the argument, and divided by its argument pi tf. This is a sinc function gonna be described mathematically with this relationship. Now we have to derive actually PSD function here. Now you know according to Wiener-Khinchin theorem here, that if the autocorrelation function of a power spectral density of a random process is known, the other can be found exactly. If you don't know, then you must know here that what is about this Wiener-Khinchin theorem here. So I will gonna show you here that what we are saying here. Uh, I will gonna show you just a minute. Just hold on a second. Uh, Here you see. Uh, I will gonna solve an example here. But first I want to show you some more thing, that what is a Wiener-Khinchin theorem here. What is about the Wiener-Khinchin theorem here. Okay. Just hold on a second, I will show you. Uh, Sorry, I'm getting late here. Basically, this is about a Wiener-Khinchin theorem here that we were talking about. For example, we have a given stationary random process here, and you know what is a stationary random process now. If you don't know, then you have to see the previous lecture, that what is a stationary random process. Now, we have a given random stationary process here, and the autocorrelation function Rx2 can be used to determine the power spectral density here. Now we are solving an example here, and I will show you this Wiener-Khinchin theorem here. Here we are defining our power spectral density as x of f here, and that will be equal to Fourier transform of the autocorrelation function here. And we can represent this power spectral density in terms of either f or either in terms of a j omega or omega here. Okay, this is again the Fourier transform of the autocorrelation function here. Now more specifically, how we're going to find it? We can find it this one if we're going to integrate our autocorrelation function using the Fourier transformation here. I will gonna find one example where we'll gonna show here. Similarly, one more thing you have to see what this theorem tells us, that if we have if we want to find the power spectral density or if we want to find the autocorrelation function from the power spectral density, then we're going to use we can find autocorrelation from the value of the power spectral density. We're going to integrate it, or using the Fourier transformation, or you can say by using the inverse Fourier transformation definition here. If you're going to find the inverse Fourier transform of the given power spectral density, we will find the autocorrelation function. Remember again that these two are the same, only difference is this one is represented in f, this one is represented in omega. This transformation is represented in f, this transformation is represented in omega here. The point is that we can apply the forward and reverse Fourier transform to be able to convert between autocorrelation function and PSD, and this is called Wiener-Khinchin theorem here, and that's what we are talking about here. Okay, so this is called Wiener-Khinchin theorem. So this is all about you can say the line codes and power spectral density is concerned. So whenever we're going to use line codes in our coming lectures, when we're going to go in detail about the digital communication, then we're going to use these definitions of the line codes here that we have discussed so far. So till then, thank you so much.